is welcoming you on ASAAL screening. You have been there. You came to some of our convention. You saw we are very disciplined. We do things very methodically. We brought you here today to discuss with you, knowing how you want to do it and how community, what is expecting from you, the community. So with that note, you are going to define yourself first 3 minutes, then some of us, maybe every one of us, will ask a question, and then at the end, you will say 2 more minutes why we are to choose you among all the other qualified candidates. Thank you. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. So actually, let me I'm keeping my own time clock on here just so I can know as well. All right. Thank you so much, Maf and Mohammed and all of ASAAL. I really am honored to be with you. I love being at the ASAAL convention in person, so I'm sorry to have to do this by Zoom, or being out with you at protests or on picket lines or organizing for taxi drivers and Uber and Lyft workers. But it's nice to be here with you and to have been your ally in so many fights. My name is Brad Lander, and I'm running to secure a just recovery for our economy, and that includes rights for all our workers in New York City as our next city controller. As many of you know, I'm the founder, and for the last 10 years have been active with the City Council's Progressive Caucus, where I've worked first and foremost on laws to help make things work better for the working people of New York City. One of my proudest laws is the one that requires living wage pay for Uber and Lyft drivers. That went together with the cap that we put on Uber and Lyft to protect our taxi drivers. But it also has meant that Uber and Lyft drivers have now nearly $1 billion that they earned instead of being in Uber and Lyft bank accounts. They got basically $5,000 raises because of legislation I passed. I've worked closely with fast food workers to help them win a fair work week and just cause labor protections all throughout New York City by organizing and passing laws with them. I passed a law that protects freelancers from wage theft, to make stronger tenant protections, to hold reckless drivers accountable, to hold the NYPD accountable, and to bring participatory budgeting to New York City. And in all of that work, I've worked extremely closely with labor leaders like yourself, with community leaders in communities. I'm proud to represent Kensington and the Bangladeshi American community there. I know that Shahid Minar, because every 21st February, I'm out fighting together with the community for your rights, and I'm proud to be a strong ally in that fight. Look, the public health and economic crisis of the past year has widened the fault lines of inequality in our city. So we need bold government action to build a more just city out of this crisis. But our city agencies can't rise to that challenge if money is wasted, if there's not accountability for mismanagement, when corruption goes unchecked, and when they don't get the resources that they need, like our Office of Labor and Policy Standards. So as New York City Controller, I'll not only be the Chief Financial Officer, making sure that we're investing smart to protect our retirees, to make sure they have good, strong retirement security, but also in ways that are consistent with the long-term future of our city. So we protect against climate crisis, so we make sure workers are earning good wages, so we're investing in our communities. And I'll also be the city's chief accountability officer, making sure our government is getting its job done so it can show up for working people. We have to balance the budget, but we cannot do that with layoffs. We cannot do that by cutting the social safety net. I know how government works and how it doesn't work, and I will be your partner in taking on the major crises facing our city. I look really forward to talking with you today about how we'll do that.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yes, so our first question comes from Somnath. You received the questions? Somnath.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay. In a brief statement, describe how you will use your office to fight for issues important to ASAAL families and their communities.
Thank you, Somnath. So just this week on Thursday, I announced a new policy that would be implemented by the Comptroller's Bureau of Labor Law to call out the most exploitative and abusive employers. You know how the public advocate has the 10 worst landlords list? Yes. No one yet has the worst employers list, those employers who don't give their workers PPE, who are wage theft, who have abusive working conditions, contractors who abuse their workers. So we're going to put out, the Comptroller's Office has enforcement responsibility for living and prevailing wage, but we also audit a wide range of other agencies, and we will put out every year a list of the most abusive employers. And we'll not only put that list out, but we'll use the contracting powers of the office to make sure the city doesn't keep contracting with abusive employers. We'll use the economic analysis, as I did with that law, to make sure Uber and Lyft drivers earn a living wage. There's a lot of ways we can make the gig economy much more fair for people. People should not be misclassified, and my office will help with research on that. And then, of course, on the pension, so we'll audit the city budget in a way that makes sure we're supporting working people. Obviously, a big piece of that are workers who are public sector workers. We have to make sure the city's doing right by our public sector workers, investing in their retirement security. And then finally, the pension funds themselves also, we need to make sure that we're investing in companies that do right by their workers. And if there are places where the pension funds are investing in companies that abuse their workers, whether here or around the world, there are the pension funds, we care a lot. DC 37 retirees don't want their retirement invested in a company that's abusing workers in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or America. And I think there's real opportunities to make sure we can guarantee retirement security with good investments, that guarantee our climate future, our retirement security, and treat workers right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Tamara Martin, Manhattan.
Yes. After our endorsement, we will work extremely hard to get you elected. If elected, will you lead an ASAAL caucus in the city council? And the second part is, how will you and your staff make sure to maintain a strong, continuous relationship with ASAAL?
Absolutely. So first of all, I'll say, I think here I just would like to be judged by my track record. So I am a good part, I love being, and you're a powerful organization. So I do it because you build power, but I also feel just a very strong bond with your organization. I admire the work you do. And I have found that to be really important for winning big fights, like the fight for fairness in the taxi and Uber and Lyft space, like the fight for the rights of immigrants in the face of all of Trump's anti-immigrant xenophobia and corruption. And bringing together community with labor is extremely powerful. To me, that's how we make a better, fairer city. Sometimes I think labor and community can get divided, where you have worker organizing over here and you have community organizing over here, but ASAAL really brings that together in immigrant neighborhoods with labor organizing. So yes, I will keep meeting with you. I'll keep coming to your events. We could definitely work together in the Comptroller's office. I believe in that model of partnership in general with community and labor organizations, and most especially for sure with ASAAL.
Thank you. Mural Islam, Queen Chapter President.
Munir bhai, unmute yourself. Unmute.
Welcome, Mr. Badlander. I have a question. What would you do to address the number of gun-related crimes in our communities? What steps would you take to help reduce the flow of gun into the New York City?
Thank you for that question. It's so important that we start by keeping our community safe. Let me start with one role the Comptroller has, and then I'll talk a little more broadly about what I think we can do. But I certainly support the Comptroller's divestment from gun manufacturers and gun retailers. This is another area where, retirees, we want maximum returns, but we don't want maximum returns from investing in people that manufacture or retail guns that wind up in our communities. So the Comptroller, Scott Stringer, has divested from gun manufacturing and gun retailers, but I will make sure we're on top of that and keep it up. And I think there might be some more opportunities there to go even further. I believe it has to be, keeping communities safe has to be a community partnership. And I have been proud to be out on the ground doing both crime prevention work, hate violence prevention work in Kensington. We've got an amazing set of community groups that are out there on the streets of the neighborhood late at night, making sure the community is safe. And I think the violence interrupter programs that have been working in Brownsville, have been working in Harlem, need to be really expanded. I voted no on last year's city budget because it, in my opinion, was not serious about changing how we achieve public safety. I don't think continuing to put $11 billion into the NYPD is making our communities safer. So I would like to see more of the resources going to those violence interrupter groups, to community-based hate violence prevention groups. And that's how I think we can keep our communities safer.
Thank you. Sultana. Sultana Khanum?
You're on mute.
Sorry. My name is Sultana Khanum. I already introduced myself, but reiterating, Political Action Director, Queens Chapter, ASAAL. I have a question. There are two parts. The question is that describe your relationship with organized labor. The second part of the question, you already slightly touched on that question, but if you kind enough, again, repeat and add more, it'll be appreciated. The second part of the question is, have you worked with any labor organization to help accomplish their goals or pass bills, which you did, you said? If so, in what capacity?
Thank you, Sultana, for that question. Yes, my partnership with labor is one of the most important things to me in my time in office. And I'm proud in this campaign to have a lot of labor unions that have endorsed me so far: Communications Workers of America, District 1, and many of their locals, United Auto Workers, Region 9A, SEIU Workers United local, the workers, Teamsters 202, the workers in Hunts Point, who just won that successful strike up at Hunts Point in the Bronx, and several other unions, and PSC CUNY, Professional Staff Congress CUNY, just endorsed, and I'm hoping to have a few more coming very soon. Let me just tell you one story here. I have so many unions that I have, I've been out on a lot of picket lines. I've actually done civil disobedience arrests together with several unions, with car washeros and with fast food workers. And I've done oversight hearings to try to help underground utility locators, cable installers, a very wide range. But probably my proudest relationship is the work, and I mentioned my work with both New York Taxi Workers Alliance, IDG, and you on the Uber and Lyft drivers, which was very work I'm really proud of. The fast food work in some ways has been the longest standing. 10 years ago, I attended one of the very first fast food worker strikes, and a worker was fired from a Burger King just outside my district in Sunset Park. And they asked me to go the next day with that worker to go to his boss and tell the boss he's not allowed to fire him and walk him back into work. And I don't think that Edwin thought it was going to work, and I don't think I thought it was going to work. So we were both very surprised when it did. When I explained to the boss he couldn't make that firing, the boss agreed and hired him back. And from that, I've continued to work. That was even before those workers did most of their organizing through SEIU 32BJ. But then they came together and they have continued to organize for the $15 minimum wage, for paid sick leave, for 2 weeks advance notice of their schedules, for a pathway to full-time jobs if they want them, and most recently for just cause protection so they can't be fired for no reason at all. And I sponsored all of those bills in partnership with them. And that's really how I like to do things. Government doesn't work because an elected official does something on his or her own. It works because there's a real partnership between labor unions, between groups like ASAAL. And
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Nulak. Nulak, are you there?
Nulak by unmute.
Mr. Lender, this is Nurul Haq. I'm the Executive Vice President of ASAAL Queens Chapter. By job, by union, I'm 1191. I'm also a member of Community Board 12 in Queens. Okay, my question is different. How would you rate Mr. Scott Stinger as a comptroller?
Yes.
I want to tell you that rank him from 1 to 10. What number would you place for him? And second part of this, do you think you can upgrade yourself from the grade you're going to give him now? What will be your grade? That's it.
Yes. These are hard questions, and I appreciate you asking the hard questions. I think highly of Scott. And I'm going to give him a good grade, but I do believe that I can do even better, or I wouldn't be running. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give Scott an 8.5. I'm going to give him an 8.5. So I think he's been a good controller. I think, for example, with the pension funds, getting them out of private prisons, getting them out of gun manufacturing, and starting to move to get them out of fossil fuels is very important. That's important for workers here, but I know many of you have families in Bangladesh, and if we can't stop climate change, that we're going to see climate devastation here in New York City, and in Chittagong and Shundip and and all kinds of other places in Noakhali. And I don't represent Sylhet. I don't have the Sylhetis in my district. Sylhet also. Anyway,
Our president from Noakhali, but you forget the capital city. I'm from Dhaka.
Okay, all right, and Dhaka, of course. All right, yes. So I think Scott has done well in pension fund investments and many other areas. I think there's a few places where I hope to build on his work and do even better. I mentioned that what we're calling the exploitative employer's wall of shame. That's the 10 worst landlords group, except for abusive companies. I think the Bureau of Labor Law can be an even stronger ally to working people, not only doing prevailing and living wage enforcement, but more broadly looking at the rights of workers in New York City and bringing all of the tools. And then I have some ideas for how to make the audits even more strategic. Sometimes I think the audits, you do them, you come up with a good investigation, but no change happens. Maybe there's a headline in the daily news. But I have some ideas for how to make the audits more strategic, and I'll give you one example. I want to have a piece of the audit team that works on accessibility in terms of language and also disability access, because the agencies are obligated by law to be accessible to people, whether that's people with physical disabilities, but also by language access. We have all these laws that say you must make sure your hotlines and your websites and your programs are all accessible. So what I'd like to do is tell people, my goal is not to have a gotcha audit. I'm going to give you a schedule. First, I'm going to come to you and other communities and say, which agencies do we think are not doing well enough at language access? And then I'm going to say, all right, here's the 5 agencies that we heard were not doing well enough. I'm telling you when I'm going to audit you. We're going to get to you in 3 months, you in 6 months, you in 9 months, you in a year. I don't want to do a gotcha audit. I want you to be ready and make your programs language accessible. And then when we get there, we're coming. So then they'll go ahead and change their behavior in advance. And then by the time we get to the audit, we could give them a good grade because they've actually gone ahead and fixed that problem. So that's like a model for making audits even more.
Yes, you have another question to ask. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ahmed Shakir. Ahmed, you are there? Ahmed, okay. If Ahmed is not, Ahmed should be there.
Yeah.
Ahmed,
Hello. You want me to speak?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Brendan. This is Mr. Ahmed Shakir. I have one question.
Go ahead.
Can you please describe the ranked choice voting in election? Is it good for our community? And can you support it, this ranked choice voting?
Yes, I fully support ranked choice voting. And I'll give you an example from my own district. I'm very proud that in my city council district, 2 wonderful South Asian labor leaders, people with a great track record of organizing for workers' rights, who are themselves Bangladeshi, who I feel very close to both of them. I've worked so close to both of them. Many of you guys, of course, know Mamnoon Al-Haq, a wonderful labor leader with NITWA for many years, a great champion of workers' rights. And then Shahana Hanif, who had worked in my office as an organizer, and she used to work at at CAV, Communities Against Anti-Asian Violence. These are two incredible people. They're both just great South Asian leaders, and I'm so proud to be close to and good friends with them. And I think they would both be marvelous council members. If you didn't have ranked choice voting, it would be a real problem that they were both in the race, because they might split the votes of the Bangladeshi community and diminish the community's power. But thanks to ranked choice voting, people could put them 1 and 2 in whatever order people believe, and then their votes will combine together to make sure that one of them is the strongest, and we don't split the votes of the community. So I think it is a really good opportunity for people, first, just to get to know more and engage in government and rank their preferences. But it also, I believe, and I've seen some data, and I asked the folks who are supporting it about it, that it actually helps immigrant communities, communities of color, to be able to be strong in getting representation, but still being able to have more than one candidate, run in a race.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much.
Sharmin Sultana. Sharmin,
Hi, Brad.
yes. Go ahead.
My question.
Hello, Sharmin.
Yeah, hi. What educational priorities do you think the legislature should focus on in 2021 that will improve the New York City public school system? I have another one. Hold on a second.
That will improve what? I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
Oh,
New York City public school.
New York City public school system.
Okay.
And another one is, do you support mayoral control of New York City schools?
So I would like some change to the second point. I would like some changes to mayoral control. I think it gives too much power to the mayor, and there's a few ways it could be changed. One would be what we sometimes call municipal control, where the city council would have stronger oversight powers and could pass laws that would relate to, or we could strengthen the panel for educational policy and give additional appointments to some other people besides the mayor, because right now the mayor has too much power, and I don't like the way that this mayor has used that a lot of times. I would like to see mayoral control changed. In terms of this year, a couple quick things. One thing I'm leading on right now is the fight for school budget relief. This crazy thing has happened where they told all the schools to hire teachers to do remote learning and blended learning, and people had to spend more on teachers to hire them. And of course they had to. But now in some of the schools, their enrollment declined a little. And Tweed, the Department of Education, is demanding hundreds of thousands of dollars back from hundreds of schools. We think it might add up to be tens of millions of dollars that Tweed wants the schools to send back. And the schools are working so hard to pay their teachers, to take care of them, and now to get ready to support our students as we start to be able to have them back in school after the pandemic. And that is a terrible idea. So we must have that school budget relief. And then we also have to invest more, I believe, in social and emotional learning. Our kids have so much trauma right now from this pandemic. And as they start to come back after we get to the other side of it, especially next fall, when I believe they'll hopefully be able to be back in the schools full time, we have to do much more to help them recover from the trauma. We're not going to be able to cram all the knowledge back in their heads right away. We need to help them recover from that trauma with more practices that help them heal. And so that's another thing I think we really have to invest in the schools.
Thank you. Albert.
Yes, I was with this, Councilman Lander, I was going to ask you, how will you ensure that the billions of dollars you will have in your control and at your disposal to help such minority and disenfranchised communities like ours in Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park, Jamaica. We are on the outskirts and have always been marginalized, and hence we have so many other issues with schools and just about everything else, from halal food not being served in our schools, and Diwali not being a holiday and things like that. How do you, and taxi medallions being bankrupted and stuff like that, and landlords and small business owners being ravished out of existence, ravished. How do you, when you're in the ivory tower of the city controller's office, and you'll have to be most of the time, but how would you be able to help us with some of those tax dollars coming back to us and in these disparate, outlying communities like ours?
Yes.
Thank you.
Albert, thank you for that question, which is so important. I will say this is another area where I hope you will start by judging me on my record. In the 39th Council District, I have made sure that extra resources go to Kensington and to the Bangladeshi communities there compared to Park Slope, where I live. I love my neighborhood. It's a wonderful neighborhood, but it has less need than Kensington does. And so I have made sure to always have a wonderful community liaison from Kensington who does office hours, and we spend time there, and we give more resources from our budget to support work there in all kinds of ways, in capital dollars, in expense dollars, in programming time. Because that's, obviously in the pandemic, we've seen when you allow the city to be so unequal, when you allow immigrant communities, South Asian communities to suffer, to not get their share of resources, it's devastating. We've lost all these lives, small businesses. 70% of the people who have lost jobs are people of color. Small business devastation has been unbelievable. The fact that we still have not provided taxi medallion relief, it does most harm in communities of color and immigrant in communities, but it harms our whole city because the opportunity for us to thrive is, the majority of young people in New York City, 70% of them are young people of color, are Black, Latino, Asian, South Asian, Pacific Islander, immigrants. They're our future. And if we have them in families that are suffering because of taxi medallion bankruptcies or small business closures, or a whole range of other reasons, our future city is not going to thrive. So it's in everyone's interest that we invest in the communities that need it most. That's my whole model for what I believe about government and what I believe about the economy. And I can promise you, I'm going to the Comptroller's office to make sure communities like yours are brought into government. And that's what I'll work hard to do every day.
Thank you very much. Our secretary always asks tough questions. Mr. Karim Chaudhary.
Oh my God. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Mr. President. I was expecting that many of our leaders are still remaining. They will finish question, but you gave me the opportunity. Brad, I know your track record is, you mentioned it, and you are a friend of Labor's, friend of South Asian community, no doubt about this thing. Your action said those things. If you are a controller, you will get different set of roles, and that comes with huge power. So as a controller, you will enforce the waste theft law, and you will do a lot of audit on city agency and consultant hiring. They're hiring outside consultant and the city agencies. What about the New York City's small businesses that does not follow the law of minimum wage, that employ millions of New Yorkers? They are living under the poverty guideline and on taxpayers' dollars. We are providing them Medicaid and other social services benefits. As controller, what you will do to make sure that our private sector city dwellers who is working in the private sector, they will get the minimum wage, $15.
Yes.
What you can do at your capacity as a controller?
Thank you for that question, Mohammed. As I mentioned earlier this week, I put out a policy, maybe I'll drop it in the chat when I'm done, to create this worst employers list. And that will be some big companies like Amazon, or maybe some, but it will also be construction contractors who don't pay their workers a living wage or provide for their safety. It will also be there'll be large and small businesses. That list, the purpose is, if you abuse your workers, if you steal their wages, if you don't take care of their health and safety, you might wind up on that worst employers list. And it's been shown that when you shine a spotlight on abusive practices, people sometimes will clean up their acts because they don't want to be on that list. And that's the whole idea. I also will team up closely with the Office of Labor and Policy Standards at the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. I've worked very closely to help establish that office in my time in the council, but I think it can do even better. And as controller, I want to partner with them. And so that would also be a big part of the work. And then in addition to the prevailing wage enforcement that you mentioned, the controller does have an oversight of contracts, and there are a lot of businesses that contract with the city, but that still are not meeting their obligations under the law. And so I would use the contracts oversight to make sure that we really are doing everything we can to make sure every company is complying with the law and paying the fair wages to their employees.
Thank you very much. So now, before we go any further, because I think your time is almost there. So Brad, you mentioned about this changing the audit procedure, getting better results. Luckily, all the members, those who does audit for you is my local union.
Wonderful.
Yes. So we are going to work together anyway.
Yes.
And we must, because all the audit that has been done, we are always asking the same question. What good it is if it is get the headline, but nothing happened. So that note, even in the citywide, I think $19 billion is spent for contracting out. Why they are contracting out when we can do the job? So all those things has to be seen. But now, because of the COVID pandemic, though the telecommuting has started vigorously across the city, I have been asking Department of Finance and Controller's Office last 20 years. They never agreed. Finally, God made them agree, and it is continued. Once you are there and COVID is gone, hopefully it will be gone, because now we have 3 different kinds of vaccination and it is going rapidly, which is good. Will you continue whenever possible? I am not talking all 100,000 titles that we represent should be commuting. Definitely, most of these titles can be continue to work from home. What is your position on that?
Absolutely. Yes. I think, this pandemic has shown us that there are so many tasks that can be done remotely, that can be done through telecommuting. And we now have the opportunity. Maybe we should have had it before. I know, Maf, you've been fighting this for a long time, but a lot of people didn't see it before. And now we can start to think more smartly what things must be on site. And of course, some things must be on site if you're going to go audit the records of HPD and look at their contracts and see whether they're complying. If those contracts are in file drawers, then of course, in that case, the auditor's got to go to where the file drawers are. But if you're auditing to see whether the websites of city agencies are complying with the language access law, you don't need to go to the controller's office to do that. And that's true in just so many parts of government. So yes, I fully think we will have to be smarter on the other side and allow much more room for telecommuting in addition to those things that have to be done in person.
Very good.
Mahabhai, I want to ask Mujib Bhai to ask a question.
Yeah, is he there? Mujib Bhai is there?
Yeah, he's waiting there. He's waiting.
No, I think he left.
No, he's here. Mujib Bhai, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I had to go for the prayer side. Thank you, Mr. Lander, to make your time to come and join this program. I have a very simple, brief question for you. Please provide a description of the current race and who are your closest opponent is, and what do you think is required for victory at this point?
Thank you. The field is getting much more crowded. For a long time, there were just 4 of us. Myself, Kevin Parker, Brian Benjamin, and David Weprin, all elected officials. And now there's 10 people in. Zach Iskell, who was in the mayor's race. A young woman I like very much, Reshma Patel, who I do think very highly of, is running. And we'll see whether Corey Johnson, the speaker, decides to run for controller or not. But I guess my path to victory is by organizing together with people in labor and communities, people who want to see a real just recovery, who know we can't just bring our economy back by giving tax breaks to businesses and hoping developers will build a lot of buildings, or by cutting the social safety net or balancing the budgets on the back of working people. That's not if you want that, you got some other candidates. For me, we build together with working people. That's my coalition. That's why it starts with a lot of labor unions, a lot of community organizations as well, like Make the Road and New York Communities for Change, a lot of grassroots political clubs in the city, like CODA, all those unions I mentioned, the Freelancers Union are supporting me. And to me, the way you win a race in New York City, as a city diverse as this, but especially with ranked choice voting, is by building a truly broad and diverse coalition. So I'm proud also to have the support of Jamal Bowman, of Assemblymember Yulene New, of Debbie Rose, Margaret Chin, Alessandra Biaggi, Julia Salazar, Congressman Jerry Nadler, and I'm working on continuing to build that broad and diverse coalition. That's been, I think, the model when I helped create the Progressive Caucus. It has members in all the boroughs. To me, that's what makes good legislation. It's what makes a good controller's office, and it's definitely what makes a winning campaign. We are making sure we have the resources we need as well. I'm not taking any money from developers, from corporate lobbyists, from fossil fuel executives, hedge funds, or private equity funds. All my money is grassroots money from working people, and through the city's matching funds campaign. I have more donors right now, twice as many donors as anyone else in the campaign. Over 5,000 New Yorkers have written small checks that get matched in the city's campaign finance system. So I am going to have the full amount you're allowed to spend in this campaign, almost all raised through the matching funds program. And that broad coalition is how I'm meant to win.
Very good. Thank you. Harjit, are you there? Harjit?
Hello, I'm sorry. Okay, so as you know, Brad, representation really does matter, right? So the question we have for you is, are you committed to increasing diversity among your staff? And if elected, how many South Asians are you planning on appointing? How will you promote the South Asian community to get local access to like city, state, and federal jobs and benefits?
It's a great question, Harjit. And I really think it's important, and I'm glad you asked it. You know, look, I'm a straight white man in a world that mostly has had straight white men as its elected leaders. And we need to change that. I said before, 70% of the young people in our city are people of color. And of course, more than half of them are young women. And that should be the leadership of our city. And I've tried hard to help make that happen. I mentioned before how proud I am that both Shahana Hanif and Mumnun al-Haq are running for my seat, two people I've worked so closely with. I would love to see South Asian representation from my district, and myself be represented that way. And actually, two other of my former staff of color have run campaigns for council right now. Juan Ardila is running in Southeast Queens against Bob Holden, and I'm supporting him. I think he'll be much more a friend of labor. And Whitney Hugh, a Chinese American, was running in Sunset Park, although she's decided to suspend her campaign and is now working on Diane Morales' mayoral campaign. So I'm deeply committed to hiring people who look like New York City, to making sure we represent the South Asian community and other communities of color, so that the future of leadership in New York City looks like the people of New York City. So I'm deeply committed to it.
I'm sorry, do you have like a particular number or a figure in your head that you would, you're committed to?
Well, this is where now I have to be a little careful with MAF, because MAF represents a lot of the existing workers in the controller's office. And so I'll be honest, and maybe I should call MAF separately. I need to understand a little better what the current structure of how many in the controller's office are civil service and how many of them are appointees of the controller. And then obviously there's a question of how many of them look to stay or go. If Scott Stringer is the next mayor, then probably a lot of the non-civil service employees in the controller's office will go work for the mayor, and there'll be more positions to hire. So I need to learn a little more, and I'll talk to Math about what I should expect in terms of how many. But I guess what I'd say is this. A majority of my senior staff, of the people that I can hire, I am committed that a majority will be people of color, that at least 50% will be women, and that includes strong representation from the South Asian community and Asian communities more broadly. I meet every year with that coalition that for a while was calling themselves 13% and growing. That was the coalition that was saying Asian communities are 13% of New York City. Council members, we expect them to be 13% of your discretionary funding. And I'm pleased that I've always had more than that as a percent of my discretionary funding. That's the same approach that we have to take in our MWBE contracting and in our staff and senior staff hiring.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
I know you're trying to get me in trouble with MAF, but
No, you're good. No, I think, you are right. Only senior staff Well, the rest of the people are civil servant. You have around 750 people there. 600 of them will be civil servant, you know. So community affairs where you can hire a lot of community people, definitely.
Yes.
We'll talk about those things. And you are prepared. I know that even, I think as you mentioned, the contributor, the more money you have collected among all the candidates. So they should know that. Now, with that note, I think we are going to conclude this way. You have the last 3 minutes, which we are going to let you speak. And the way we conclude, after tonight's all the interviews being done, I did not know even that Reshma Patel is running. If you have a number, text me the number later.
Yes.
I'll call her and say if she want to talk to us. So that's good. Now, so what will happen? We are now around approximately 19 people right now. So we will be, you know, let them give their opinion. And then of course we do a secret ballot. According to that, whoever gets the highest will be number one choice, then it will be the number two, and so on and so forth. But
Mama, let me ask a question.
oh, you have a question? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I missed
Okay.
it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have very specific question. One is imaginary and other one is practical. So my first question is how you would have dealt with the pandemic if you would have been the person in power, and what is your opinion regarding the understatement of senior center death numbers by the governor? So if you were in that role, what would have been your position? Tell us. This is my imaginary question. And second question, very straight and clear. Are we going to get ASAAL caucus in city council if we elect you?
So I know you guys have been doing a lot of interviews, but I have to say for the city council, you have to, like the controller, what I can say is ASAAL will always be represented and welcome in the controller's office.
Thank you.
For sure. Oh, that's such a big question on the pandemic. I guess I'll say the following things. First, I would listen better to my public health experts and staff. The New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene knew earlier that we should shut down the schools, knew earlier that we needed to stand up testing, knew earlier that we needed to focus our outreach and our testing in immigrant communities, in communities of color, and they knew all those things. And the mayor did not listen and the governor did not listen. So the first step is you have these experts who are public health experts and they're trained for this. You listen to them and you don't think you know better. I think a lot of times elected officials, mayors, people that get elected think they know better than the people who do the work in our city, and then failing to listen to our doctors and nurses and epidemiologists and public health experts was just terrible at every level. The president did it, the governor did it, and the mayor did it. If I were in charge, look, I'm not a public health expert or an epidemiologist or an MD. And so what I believe you do is work closely with the people. This is just true of the partnership with labor in general. You can't think you know it all. You want to help make good decisions and guide the city, but it's got to be informed by the people who really know what is going on. And that's where I would have started.
Very good. Now, Brad, this is your last 2 minutes. Why we have to choose you among all the good candidates. Thank you.
I feel really honored to have this opportunity with you. And of course, I really do hope, I guess what I'll say is this. Other candidates may tell you why they think they would be a good controller. Nobody wants the ASAAL endorsement more than I do. That's just for sure. Some of that is that I've worked with you for such a long time, but more of that is two things. You represent the way of building power that I think democracy is all about. You organize with people in their communities and in their workplaces to make sure that working people, that community people, that people of color have a voice. It doesn't happen because you say it happens. It happens because there's organizing and you build power, and you're looking for leaders who want to build power with organizations like that through campaigns and elections and in government, in passing legislation, in passing budgets, in all the pieces. And that's what I've done in the council, and that's what I'm doing in this campaign, and that's what I'll do in the controller's office. And I guess, I do have the most money in the race, the most volunteers, the most grassroots energy, the most labor unions. But really, the truth is, I know we can build a more just city, that the way we will thrive, the way we'll get out of this pandemic, the way we will restore our small businesses and bring back our economy is not by looking primarily to the business community. We need to work with the business community, but it is by working closely with the people of New York City, with the workers, with their representatives. That's where the energy and the future of our city lies, is in our communities with our people. So it's not only the best way to win the comptroller's race, though it's the best way to win a just recovery for our city. And I really believe that's what ASAAL represents. I feel so honored to have worked with you in the past, and together we can win this campaign and win a more fair, a more just, and a recovered city that is more ready for the next crisis than we were for this one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate. I think it has been a pleasure for us because you have been there, you came to our convention, you always responded to us, and today is no different. And we wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Such an honor to be with you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, you can leave.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Bye-bye.
Okay, now Kevin Farker, Senator Kevin Farker, supposed to be.
Yeah, he'll be any minute. He'll be any minute.
Hopefully.
His
confirmed
campaign
10
manager was
times.
in touch with me. His campaign manager.
We have 10 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Mr. Bragg. I already fall in love with him.
Don't vote
really?
for now.
Oh my God, he is so good.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum. Good evening, Mr. ASAAL founder president Mesbah Bhai.
What happened?
Very bright secretary Karim Bhai. Very bright and sweet.
No, what happened? Why you were so late?
No, I'm so late because I have family matter here. I'm sorry, family emergency. So.
Karim Bhai, not very bright, not very sweet. He is very handsome.
Yeah.
Dada, this is the word. Thank you, Dada. Thank you.
No, he looks bright because when he see me, Apurza is here. He looks bright. I think so.
That's right.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
So you guys miss me.
We all missed you a lot. Okay.
ম্যাপ ভাই করিম ভাই
জি
এখন তো অফ টাইম 10 মিনিটস একটু অন্য আলাপ করি এই ওই ব্রাডল্যান্ডার এই নোয়াখালী সম্পর্কে এত কিছু জানলো কেমনে
এটাই
আমার একটু প্রশ্ন যে আমাদের প্রেসিডেন্ট সাহেব সেক্রেটারি সাহেব ওনারা কি একটু বেশি পুশ করছেন কিনা
I know it's coming.
No, because
he has a lot of constituents.
Kensington, he goes to Bangladesh families everywhere in Kensington. So that is the reason I think he knows. In person, he does not know.
নুরুল ভাই তাহলে বোঝেন যে নোয়াখালীর কত ইম্পর্টেন্ট ডিস্ট্রিক্ট।
আরে বলে কি আমি তো ঢাকায় থেকে আমার পাশে আমার চারদিকেই নোয়াখালী, আমার ডানেও নোয়াখালী বামেও নোয়াখালী, আমার এই বেইলি রোডের বাসা সব এদিকে চারদিকে নোয়াখালী। ঢাকা
What about বগুড়া? What about
বলেন ব্যবসা বাণিজ্য শিল্প সবই এখন নোয়াখালী।
হক ভাই
সেই ধাক্কা এখন এসে মনে হয় আমাদের নিউ ইয়র্কে লেগে গেছে।
হক ভাই
না আমরা কি বলবো ভাই
না আমি বলতেছি কি নোয়াখালী মানুষ হলো যুগের মতো লাগে থাকে, এই জন্য ব্যাডল্যান্ডার